guys are an exuberant bunch. Incredible. Wow. I'm in the right place at the right time. All right, so I'm going to just jump right in. In the acknowledgments page of my new book, Vital Signs, the last but not least entry is an acknowledgement of my mother for being a consummate role model in living a passionate life, and also for always giving me lots of material to write about. But there's a postscript to that acknowledgement that I want to share because it has a lot to do with my personal interest in the subject of passion. And that is that in the last 15 or 20 years or more of her life, starting roughly in her early 60s, her get up and go, as they say, got up and went. All right? This is her spark, her mojo, her life force. I think it was a combination of both a certain amount of neglect and a certain amount of the law of entropy. All right? And the law of entropy tells us that systems tend to lose energy over time, unless, of course, you pump more energy into the system. So in other words, a hot cup of coffee is going to cool down unless you reheat it. All right? A clock is going to wind down unless you rewind it. Oatmeal is going to congeal if you stop stirring it, as will marriages. My mother just stopped stirring the oatmeal. She slowly opted out of active engagement in life, which is really what I think passion is ultimately about, is engagement. And what clarified this for me was a single conversation she and I had a couple of years ago. She had been at loose ends about how to spend her time since retiring from being a stockbroker. And very uncharacteristically, one afternoon, she asked me what I thought she should do with her time. And so I made some suggestions. I said, well, what about taking some art classes? She said, I did that already. As if art is something you do once and check off a list. I said, how about taking one of those music appreciation courses at the college that'll take you on field trips to the symphony and the opera, because she wasn't driving anymore. And she said, oh, those are for old people, which just prompted me to bite my tongue. I said, what about a trip? I know you can't do the adventure travel anymore that you prefer, but what about cruise up the Inside Passage or a barge trip in Provence or something? At least you'll get out of Dodge. And she said, nah. I mean, here's this marvelously articulate person, nah. I said, how about volunteering with SCORE, Service Corps of Retired Executives, National Mentoring Program? I said, you have so much amazing experience that you could be sharing with people coming up through the ranks. And to which she said, oh, please, volunteering? That counts for absolutely nothing on a resume, she said. To which I said, Mother, you're 82 years old. Are you still building your resume? Are you still climbing the corporate ladder? I mean, not that you should give up the good fight ever, but come on, you know? And I think it was at that moment that I realized I had to give up my own good fight. This is the one where I continued to encourage and cajole and inspire and outright nag my mother to take on some new challenges, to make some new friends, to get out of the house, to submit herself to some of the deeper calls that come in this later phase of life. Just to re-engage with the world, come back to life after what I perceived to be the dual demotivators of retirement and a second divorce. Or as she put it once, nobody to do it for anymore. That's a very revealing comment. You know, and I don't know, maybe a lot of people have this realization, maybe especially when they retire, that they discover that they have a kind of a radioactive core of depression inside of them. It was just being held in check all those years by, if you will, the cooling towers of busy lives, okay? And when those busy lives stop, or even just slow down, the depression comes to the fore, you know? I just think that my mother lost the will to participate, to explore and create and contribute and sing and dance, right? And she stopped investing herself in life, stopped investing in herself. And it turns out, as I discovered, you can't make somebody do that. Even if you are Mr. Callings, you know, and your own mother is throwing your game all off, you know? But I wondered, how does this happen? How does it happen that passion, that people lose their appetite for being in the game? You know what I mean? And I mean people with a lot of life force, too. Like, I just have to put this in a little perspective for you, my mother's situation, so you have a better understanding of what happened to her. She was a force of nature, all right? She was a dynamo, one of the first women on Wall Street back in the early 1960s. World traveler, expert skier and sculptor, and reader of the New York Times from cover to cover, and mother of 3 boys. 4 if you include my father. But I wondered, how does it happen that this level of passion and engagement turns into dispassion, turns into boredom and resignation and time being torn off the calendar unused? And of course, how do you stop the slide? All right, so I know a few things now that I didn't back before I started the Vital Signs book. And that is, for instance, passion tends to come and go. There's no such thing as a life of passion any more than there's a perpetual motion object. You know, I mean, it's got its seasons. It comes and it goes. I know that life is perfectly capable of knocking the stuffing out of people, even strong people, you know, with its demands and its disappointments and its sometimes mind-numbing routines, you know? And if you're one of those people who's just trying to kind of keep your head above water, just trying to get by day to day, maybe it's asking a lot to also kick up your heels. How many of you guys have ever seen the movie Dead Poets Society? Ring a bell? You'll recognize this then. I actually heard somebody say this. She said, I have a Carpe Diem mug. And truthfully, at 6 a.m., it does not make me want to seize the day. It makes me want to slap a dead poet. That's what she said. And I know that there's a clue in there when my mother says there's nobody to do it for anymore. All right? Because psychologists talk about what they call primary and secondary motivation. All right? Primary motivation is doing something for its own sake. All right? For the charge, the challenge, the thrill of doing it. And secondary motivation is doing it for a payoff. All right? Whether it's attention or money or power or sex or fame or whatever. And I think there's a pretty simple test to determine which one of those two is in the driver's seat. And that is that when the payoffs dry up, do you still do the work? Are your passions still intact? Right? Nor is this by any means just a challenge for older people. All right? I know aging has something to do with it. I mean, just in the law of entropy being what it is. You know, that the energy it takes to fuel our passions may not be in the batteries to the same degree they were when we were younger, and you can't just slap in a new pair of batteries. All right? So even though there's a certain slowing down that does occur as we get older, a tempering of the fight and the drive in us, I think that losing interest in life is purely optional and detrimental. I say that because I think of passion really as ultimately a survival mechanism, because our attachment to life depends on our interest in it. You know, our sense of curiosity and wonder and reverence and gratitude and participation, right? My brother Ross recently sent me an article about the mother of a mutual friend of ours whose resume reads almost exactly like our mom's. In fact, both of them were among the first women on Wall Street. And in explaining to the interviewer her strategy for staying engaged and passionate about life, she said, well, you get up in the morning, you get out, and you stay active. And I know this is almost the stuff of cliche, but I think it explains a lot about why she is still in the game and going to work part-time in her mid-90s and sharp as a tack. You know, so clearly there's a correspondence between passion and productivity and success, if not longevity. You know, there's a wonderful book out there called Corner Office by New York Times columnist named Adam Bryant. And Adam interviewed 700 CEOs, and he asked them, what qualities do you see most often in people who succeed? And number one on their collective lists, passionate curiosity. Passionate curiosity. This is probably what my father was trying to instill in me and my two brothers with his favorite game to play with the three of us while we were growing up. This is something he invented called the alien game. All right, the alien game. And the way this worked was he was an alien from another planet, which we had suspected all along. And we were his guides on Earth. So we would go out into the neighborhood or into the city or down by the shore, and he would ask questions about the planet that he saw, and we had to try to explain it to him. All right? So it was a great teaching tool. So he would say, what are the white formations that move through your atmosphere? I know in California you've sort of forgotten what those are, haven't you? I feel for you. But, and we'd say, right. And then he'd say, what are they composed of? And we'd say, water. And then he'd say, how do they get up there and what holds them up? And what makes them move? And, you know, pretty soon it becomes obvious to us earthlings that clouds aren't the only things over our heads. You know, the whole afternoon would go by while we tried to figure out what holds it up. You know, and mostly how it's possible that you can know so much and understand so little. You know what I'm saying? You can live with something every day of your life and never come to understand its most basic properties. You know, or live with someone every day of your life. Same thing, you know. But again, maintaining passionate curiosity, all right? What Buddhists call beginner's mind, what educators call being a lifelong learner, is not just an issue for older people. You know, the spirit of enthusiasm, beautiful word, by the way, entheos means the God within. By following your deepest enthusiasms, by definition, you're following God. All right? But the spirit of enthusiasm and passion, youthfulness, if you will, the spirit of youthfulness is often lost on youth themselves. I see this all the time because I go into colleges to do presentations on the Callings workshop, all right? And I often see old people of 20. You know, this is people who seem to have kind of passed through the membrane between youth and adulthood with very little of their joie de vivre intact. They've lost their sense of inspiration, their spark. They've stopped demanding great things of themselves, or even interesting things sometimes. And, you know, granted, sometimes they're kind of frozen in the headlights of having to declare a major and choose a career path, make a living, pay off their college loans, figure out how they're going to get out of their parents' basement at 30. And you know, in the process of doing this, of contending with all these things, you know, it's easy to become, you know, to have sort of a precocious senility kick in. You know, you become adulterated. So kind of prematurely arthritic in your outlook on life. And so after my sobering conversation with my mother, I was all set to congratulate myself for having fallen far from the tree. But then I remembered a conversation that I had had with my brother, Ross, when we were in our early 30s, okay? We were comparing notes on various passions and pleasures that we had let slide in the years since college, just kind of wondering where they went, or where we went. And it wasn't that some of them hadn't been replaced by some new passions, new pleasures, but a lot of them were just the victims of neglect also. And between us at the time, they included piano playing, guitar playing, dancing, camping, kayaking, skiing in the mountains, which were only 2 hours away, swimming in the ocean, which was only 2 blocks away, and lovemaking with our respective partners who were only arm's length away. You know? So we're comparing notes on all these just habits of avoidance. You know what I mean? Years of cultivating footpaths around the piano on the way into the kitchen. You know, near the garden on our way to and from work, under the kayaks that are hanging in the garage collecting spider webs. You know, and how when we occasionally came to and reached for the guitar, or the girlfriend, as the case may be, after so much time away, they had grown a little bit cold to the touch. You know? You guys remember the Far Side comics? I have one of these on the wall in my office that really captures this. This is a picture of Medusa. All right, Medusa, her hair is a nest of snakes. It shows Medusa holding a mouse just beyond their reach, and the caption says, Medusa teasing her hair. I wish Gary would come out of retirement. I really do. But the point is that it is tragically easy to lose touch with our passion and our exuberance and our energies and vitalities, and in any arena, vocational, creative, relationship, spiritual, in any arena, to let them kind of slide into disuse or get siphoned from us by all kinds of, just the downward pulling forces of day-to-day living on Main Street life. Fear and stress and boredom and routine and responsibilities, Great Recession, Code Orange world. I mean, it's no wonder a lot of people feel like battening their hatches. In fact, I sometimes think that life itself is so full of deterrence to passion and exuberance and even authenticity that what we casually refer to as normal behavior is really a state of arrested development. It's just so pervasive we often don't even notice it. So I'm in a cemetery near my house, beautiful old cemetery near my house, and recently, and I'm standing next to, I've discovered a grave site for a W.C. Stradley, okay, who, according to the epitaph, lived a spotless life, a triumphant death, okay? And I stood in front of this gravestone for a little while, and I just stood there and I thought about it, and I thought, well, I would much rather see it the other way around. A triumphant life, a spotless death. That'd be fine with me. I don't know, a spotless life doesn't really strike me as something to aspire to. I think if you don't leave this life with a few grass stains on your jeans, you've missed the boat. If not the point, which is not to rise above it all, wear your Sunday best all week long. It's to sink your teeth into it. Let it drip down your chin. I know this will probably scandalize some of you, but I've got a friend who has a poster in her kitchen. It shows a picture of a woman on her hands and knees cleaning out a bathtub, and a caption that says, "A clean house is the sign of a wasted life." Oh, you approve. Interesting. In which case, I ought to be doing great. But the thing is that the human mind really, in many ways, is an absolute zoo of tactics for keeping a lid on our exuberances, and playing it safe. I met a young guy in San Francisco a couple of years ago who said to me that his entire life he has wanted to be a teacher and a public speaker, but that he spent so many years, as he put it, biting my tongue, that he literally had a pronounced scar on the tip of his tongue, like a big callus, from where he'd apparently bitten it repeatedly. I mean, there's so many ways that we find of settling for less. We tell ourselves often that adventure is for adventurers, Daring is for daredevils. Gambling is for gamblers. Thrill is for thrill seekers. And these are all descriptions of people who are not us. But I think that if we attempt to drain life of its thrill and play it safe, frankly, I think we're gambling with our lives anyway. We're taking the chance that we are not going to live to regret it. Just because you're safe doesn't mean you won't be sorry. Clint Eastwood used to say, if you want a guarantee, buy a toaster. So, a few more things. I think there's a reason. I hear this a lot. I get this question because what accounts for all the discussion in the last 5 or 10 years about passion? We hear about it, the business world, the leadership world talk about employee engagement. Educators, teachers talk about becoming a lifelong learner. Coaches, career development people talk about finding a calling. Couples counselors talk about getting the spark back. So people sometimes ask me, why do we have such a fascination with this subject? I think, this is one of my responses to it, I think that it's the flip side of our fascination with zombies and vampires. I did a little bit of research. There have been over 50,000 books written about those two subjects in the last 20 years. 50,000. And over 500 movies and TV shows about zombies and vampires. And I think, this is our collective anxiety about being drained of our life force and left in a catatonic state. And I don't think it's a coincidence that every culture in the world has a word for vampire. This is a creature or force so needy that it sucks the life force out of others. All right? So, as for maybe one of the first steps in getting it back is just to gently and compassionately ask yourself, what drains vitality and passion out of my life? Where do I lose it? Just as one up-leveling of our consciousness around it. Where do I lose my energy and passion? Is it a job that sucks the life out of you? Is it a relationship where you feel like a ghost of your full glorious self? Is it your eager and capable mind being put in dull circumstances? Right? Is it life goals you don't have any passion for? Or having them but doing nothing about them? Is it work or some other engagement that's literally demeaning? I mean, lacking in any sense of meaning or purpose. I ran across a story not long ago about a couple who retired, sold their house, most of their possessions, bought an RV, and took off on the road to enjoy their golden years. And according to the story, they after 2 months of this, they apparently got bored to the point of a near-death experience. And they hooked up their traveling with what's called habitating. All right? This is a subculture of RVers called caravanners who travel around the country helping Habitat for Humanity build people homes. It's fascinating. And so what they've done is by hooking their leisure up to service, they infused it with a renewed sense of purpose, very closely related to passion. Sense of purpose, and, if you will, a renewed sense of drive. So, I'm going to finish with this. I've been experimenting recently Because the way I encourage people to look at vitality is looking at the small things we can do to pump it up. I'm not talking about the extreme makeovers, you know, the 5-year plans. I'm talking about the way to cultivate passion is in the moment, in the gesture, all right, in the decision. And I'll give you an example of what I mean. Because I've discovered recently this little downward pulling force. Habit, it's a habit, a daily habit in my life that every single day drains a little bit of energy out of me, all right? And what it is that in the transition zone between sleeping and waking up in the morning, which I get to enjoy in slow-mo because I don't get woken up by an alarm clock. Helps to be self-employed. But what I've noticed is that what typically gets me out of bed is a thought, all right, about something I got to get done that day, something I should have got done yesterday and didn't, a looming deadline, an annoying sound outside the window, or just a rebuke for letting myself sleep in again, all right? So in other words, a negative thought is what propels me out of bed in the morning. So in the last 6 or 8 months, I've been experimenting with a new approach. Instead of letting a negative or worrisome thought be the first thing that goes through my mind when my feet hit the floor, thereby grounding me and my day in that disposition, what I'm now doing is I'm waiting a couple of minutes, just lying around in bed, waiting until a more affirmative thought crosses my mind, and then only touching my feet to the floor on that note. You know, in other words, an upswing rather than a downer. And I'm noticing that it not only helps me rise, but shine. You know? So that, again, is the level at which I'm encouraging people to address the things in their life that compromise their vitalities and their energies and their passions and their spark. You know? And, you know, of course, the work of bringing it back to life. All right? So I just want to say in closing that in the spirit of helping us do that, the workshop this afternoon, across the street, 1 to 4, is a hands-on opportunity to look at, take sort of a snapshot or a mugshot of your vitality, all right? To look at where it appears in your life and where it disappears, you know? What inspires it and what defeats it, and what your own life force wants from you at this juncture. So I hope you'll come, and thank you guys so much for inviting me. Thank you guys. Thank you.